really good. Um,
Welcome back to Twitter Titty Twisters. It's me, yours truly, the Sultan of Sweater Puppies, Dalton Pruitt. And oh boy, this pair has been embroiled in controversy lately. These belong to the one and only Morgpie, popular e-girl Twitch streamer. You know, one of these online ladies. And you know we're here to focus on the boobies, the meat, okay. And these is heavy hangers, pendulous. If you were to hang 4 or 5 of these from 2 rods, you know, connect 2 strings on each one at different angles, and affix them to 2 rods running parallel to spaced out, running parallel to each other. Get 4 or 5 of these connected, lined up, connected to the rods. Pull one back, release the titty, and it would slam into the other titties and transfer that kinetic energy through the titties, and then the final titty would then bounce upward, almost to the exact same position from which the initial titty was dropped. It would bounce upward, swing back, and repeat the process, and so on and so forth. That's physics, okay? That's science. That's potential energy and kinetic energy as moving through breasts, through honkers. And you know, yeah, that's just science, folks. And I'm somewhat of a booby scientist myself. Back to formula. And speaking of, notice how these are somewhat asymmetrical. Titties can sometimes resemble testicles in that way, with one hooter descended lower than the other. And I enjoy it. I love it when sometimes when a pair of boobs makes me think of balls. You know, it just reminds me, you know, we're not that different, ladies. You know, we're not that different from each other. But there is a natural spiritual beauty in in asymmetry, in the quote unquote flawed. Okay, because notice how these is hanging, they're heavy, they're a little lopsided. On the left breast, my right, her left, it looks like there's some sort of birthmark or beauty mark. Maybe it's a bruise, I don't know, but it's some sort of blemish. You know, they're imperfect. You know, pale translucent. I'm noticing some veins. There might even be some stretch marks. You know, I'm trying to get a closer look. But that's just the nature of titties. That's the nature of the breast. And it reminds me of when I was in college. In my an American short story class I took, we studied a short story by Nathaniel Hawthorne published in 1843 called The Birthmark. And in this story, there's this renowned scientist named Aylmer who is really good at he's a good scientist, and he just drops everything to go marry the love of his life, the beautiful Georgiana, who is perfect in every way, except she has a red birthmark in the shape of a hand on her cheek. And Aylmer just can't get over this birthmark. He hates it, and he starts to obsess over it, and he just can't get anything done because his otherwise perfect wife has this blemish on her face that's driving him crazy. And, you know, she's a lady. She knows her place. And she says, whatever you want, honey. If you want to get rid of it, if this birthmark is that bad, whatever I got to do, whatever you want to do, let's fix this. And so he works night and day to figure out some way to get rid of this birthmark on her. He's dreaming of cutting it up and doing all kinds of things, mangling her. And eventually he works on some formula. In the book it calls it in the story they call it a potion. And he hands Georgiana this potion at the end of the story and says, "Here, drink this. I think I got it figured out." And so Georgiana, his wife, drinks the potion, and the birthmark disappears. And she says, "Finally, honey," I'm paraphrasing, but she says, I'm finally perfect in the way you want me. Also, I'm dying." And then she dies. And that's how the story ends. And I think what we're supposed to interpret from that is that the birthmark in some way represents nature, the inherent flaws and asymmetry and imperfections that exist within nature, because nowhere is there perfection in nature. And the perfection lies within the imperfection. So, from we can extrapolate from that story, from these ideas, that when we look upon a set of slobber knockers, that the real beauty, the natural beauty of them, lies within their imperfections. That's why I always go on about veins and sunspots and stretch marks, asymmetry, lopsidedness, flip-flopping, banana titties, all of it, because that's the natural world. That is the nature of nature itself. As God made us, or as we evolved in the chaos therein. Whatever you want to believe. And it's usually our efforts to contort the natural into our ideals of perfection that can oftentimes lead to unintended consequences, sometimes disastrous. When it comes to boobs, especially, early boob technology was a mess. It was a nightmare. In our effort to make titties bigger and better, they came out looking bolt-on. They looked like bolt-ons and blocky, like Lara Croft in the first Tomb Raider. And as boob technology developed, we see the goal has been more and more to recreate the natural look rather than strive for perfection, make them bigger, give them heft, but still maintain naturalness within the titties. And those are the best fakers, are the ones you can't even tell are fake, the ones that look human still, natural in some way. And I don't know if these are I don't know if these are fakers or not. They don't look like fakers. I'm just using that as an example of our obsession with perfection and symmetry. And I just noticed with these, there are flaws, there are imperfections, there's asymmetry, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And that goes back to what I was saying, what we learned from the Nathaniel Hawthorne story, the birthmark. I highly recommend it. It's a very good story. The short story, much like jazz, is one of the true American art forms. But enough with that. 10 out of 10 wood motorboat.